Hey everyone, I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer today. We're going to be unpacking a genuinely fascinating paper by Ryan McLean titled The Seal of the Prophets, Conceptual Invariance in the Ishmaelite Transmission of Divine Revelation. Basically, we're going to look really deeply at how Christianity and Islam, two massive history-shaping traditions, transmit divine revelation across centuries. So get ready to put on your historian hats because we are going to trace an ancient family mystery. Now, before we get into the heavy theology here, McLean actually hooks us with something so incredibly relatable, office lunch dynamics. He jokes that in literally any office, you've got different departments doing their own thing, little lunch groups forming, the door dashers, the people actively avoiding the break room, and of course, if the company buys lunch, everyone is equally displeased. It's such a funny, humanizing point. Because despite all the complex historical and theological layers we're about to explore, this is fundamentally a story about everyday human connection, families, and how we pass down what matters most to us. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, solving a family mystery. Then, what is a prophet? After that, Abraham the shared root, two branches, one tree, the Kaaba's genealogical center, and finally, we'll uncover the true meaning behind the seal of the prophets. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Solving a Family Mystery, and the need for a strict methodology. So to solve this mystery fairly, we absolutely have to apply the exact same rules to both traditions. If we're going to act as neutral history detectives, we can't judge one by its texts and the other by its institutions, right? Everyone gets the exact same test. To measure this, McLean uses what he calls conceptual invariance. Think of it kind of like this. If you have two giant Lego castles, you want to know if they were built from the same instruction book. Or imagine your grandma has this ancient, amazing chocolate chip cookie recipe. She gives a copy to Aunt Sarah and Uncle Sam. Centuries pass, the families move, languages change. To figure out who kept the recipe pure, you don't just look at the cookies. You have to ask, who actually received the recipe? Who preserved it? Who clarified it when people got confused? Who made it accessible? Who embodied it? And who transmitted it safely to the next generation? These 6 steps are our invariants. They show us exactly how a message survives history without getting corrupted or dropped in a puddle. Now, what's really interesting about McLean's master map of this whole thing is that it acts as our visual blueprint. It traces both the Isaic genealogy, which Christianity follows through Israel to Jesus Christ, and the Ishmaelite genealogy, which Islam follows through the Kaaba to Muhammad. We aren't here today to argue about which branch reaches the quote-unquote best apples. We're just carefully, impartially observing how both lines claim to perfectly preserve the exact same starting instructions from the one creator. Moving on to Section 2, what is a prophet? And really the semantics of revelation. Before we can track the history, we really need to figure out what a prophet actually is. Because, in English, we kind of squish everything into this one word, prophet. But in the ancient languages of these traditions, the words reveal very different job descriptions. Let's start with Hebrew. The word is nabi. The defining feature here is that the individual is fundamentally called by God first. They don't just appoint themselves. They receive a message and basically serve as a reminder to the people of an existing covenant. They're essentially saying, hey, remember the promise we made? We need to get back to it. Now, jumping over to Greek, the word is prophetes. Here, the emphasis shifts just a bit to representative speech. It's someone who speaks publicly on behalf of another. And eventually, in the Christian tradition, like we see outlined in the Gospel of John, this concept shifts pretty dramatically from just speaking words to the word itself literally becoming flesh in Christ. But in Arabic, things get really fascinating because they actually use 2 distinct words. Nabi is someone who receives a revelation from God. But a rasul, that is a messenger dispatched with an authoritative message. Think of it like a mail carrier. Nabi means you got the incredibly important letter in your own mailbox. Rasul means you have been officially commissioned to put on the uniform and deliver that letter safely to everyone else. Which brings us to Section 3, Abraham, the shared root, acting as the shared compression point. So the crucial point here is that Abraham acts like a giant roundabout in a very old road system. This is the vital starting point where both the Christian and Islamic genealogies firmly intersect. Lots of roads come together here at Abraham and then branch out. He was asked to trust God completely before he even had a map or a 5-year plan. His job was to confess the one creator, to totally reject idols, and most importantly, pass that torch forward. He couldn't just sit on it. That promise was meant to move outward through his descendants.
That naturally leads right into section 4, 2 branches, 1 tree, the branching of the genealogy.
This brings us to the historical branching of this family tree. And remember our neutral methodology from earlier? We aren't taking sides or declaring a winner here. It's like looking at 2 main limbs of a giant apple tree growing from the exact same trunk. We are just impartially observing how both develop. The Isaacic branch, which Christianity follows, operates on what MacLean calls a grammar of abiding. Like a branch staying tightly connected to a vine, the goal is to abide in the life of the incarnate Word, Jesus Christ. The Ishmaelite branch, however, operates on a grammar of preparation. It's all about preserving a sacred space, maintaining a lineage, and keeping the conditions totally perfect for future revelation. It's about protecting the stage until the final messenger actually arrives. We actually see this direct connection to Abraham explicitly in the historical scholarship. Henri Lamens, a prominent Catholic scholar of Islam, points out that Muhammad intentionally connected Islam to Abraham, regarding him as its religious ancestor. By proclaiming that patriarch the founder of the Kaaba, he intended to divest the ancient Meccan sanctuary of its pagan character and consecrate it purely to the worship of Allah. This was a deliberate, powerful return to the roots.
Now on to section 5. The Kaaba's genealogical center, which serves as a geographic invariant.
So you might be wondering, how do you actually preserve a family memory across centuries of desert history, way before the printing press was a thing? Well, you use a geographic invariant, an architectural structure that literally carries the weight of history. The Kaaba acts as this incredible family lighthouse. Imagine your family has one ancestral home that everyone travels back to. The Kaaba gathers memory, it orders worship, and it gives a single physical direction, a shared compass, for an entire community. Rulers might come and go, and the physical stones might get repaired over the centuries, but its job of keeping the light of Abrahamic obedience burning, that never stops. It makes the history tangible.
And finally, section 6, the seal of the prophets, culmination without reduction.
This brings us to where the Ishmaelite genealogy reaches its designated historical culmination. When Muhammad arrives, he brings revelation that becomes totally foundational. As Lamens observes, the doctrinal and disciplinary sources of Islam are contained in the Quran and the Sunnah. He clearly defines the Quran as written revelation descending directly from heaven, while the Sunnah represents the oral revelation flowing through the channel of tradition. And this brilliantly illustrates how the community is meant to survive after the prophet is gone. As Lamens continues, the Quran and the Sunnah eventually became essentially equal factors, intended to establish the rules of religious life. It's this beautiful balance where the textual and the oral traditions work together to ensure the message is never, ever lost. Which brings us right to Muhammad's specific title, Khatam an-Nabiyyin, or the Seal of the Prophets. Now, people so often think this just means chronologically last, like, the last kid running into class right before the bell rings. But in the Arabic linguistic tradition, it has a much, much deeper relational function. Think of an actual wax seal on an ancient letter. That seal isn't just the last blob of wax you happen to have lying around. The seal proves the letter is real. It authenticates it. It protects the letter from being opened and tampered with by someone else. And it signifies that the message inside is totally complete. So, calling Muhammad the seal means he confirms the previous prophets, protects the revelation from further corruption, and brings the whole sequence to a close, because the message is finally finished. But, that leaves us with this incredible realization. If the prophetic letter is officially sealed, and there are no more prophets coming, the burden entirely shifts. It shifts directly to the Ummah, the community of believers. So, my question for you today is this. If the message is completely sealed, how does a community carry that immense responsibility forward? How do they protect, interpret, and live out a completed revelation across thousands of years of constantly changing history? It's a profound challenge of human preservation, and it's honestly what makes the study of this tradition so deeply captivating. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.